How's everybody doing? Well, today we have a little surprise for you. Today we're going to have someone, myself included, and we're going to all talk about relationships and our relationships and what we do, how we go through them, what are the issues, how do we resolve them, how do we heal from relationships, and then what do we do ourselves to nurture the wound that we may have experienced during the course of the relationship and afterwards, and then how to bounce back. So today we are going to have our panelists, our one panel, Mr. Alex Rodriguez, and of course we have Mrs. Keisha Farmer and myself. And you guys can chime in and give your opinions. If you have questions, I will go on the air after the interview, and we're going to have some questions. You and I, Mr. Rodriguez is an educator, and he will be having to go to work tomorrow. And Ms. Farmer is also an educator as well, so myself included. So I think it will give a nice perspective of relationship dynamics and not just is common to everybody, but that might touch home with each and every single one of you. I have a horse underneath my tongue because I'm still having flare-ups, okay, and I'm having some coffee because I'm not drinking as much. You all know why. All right, let me make myself comfortable, take off my jacket, and I will have Mr. Rodriguez. We're going to start with you first, and introduce yourself.
Quickly, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I'm Alex Rodriguez. I'm living here in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and it's a complete honor and privilege to have my two friends here to join me in company. So it's been a wonderful time and a blessing to have you all here. Thank you.
I'm Keisha Farmer. I am an artist based in Houston, Texas. And we've been visiting here in Dallas for the past 4 days. Mr. Rodriguez has been hosting us and showing us the city, and we've had some very lively discussions about metaphysics and esoteric and astrology, and we're just excited to be amongst like-minded individuals and also to be in front of you guys to, share our knowledge and also talk about, the knowledge that you have and what you bring to the show as well. So we're really excited to be in front of you today.
As well as the school, talking
And
to
the school, yes.
And the school.
Ready to get the school started.
That's been a great topic of discussion.
Yes, we will be running for 40 minutes. And we're going to jump right in. So you guys have been in a relationship, in a marriage. I myself, was also in a common law marriage, not an official marriage, but a common law marriage, in which I'm being now divorcing and making many changes in my life. And I think all of you have seen how it has affected me personally, including Emery and all other people involved. And it's something that has happened to all of us, breakups, separation. And like I've always said, it's not 75% of life is how you respond. 25% is what happens to you. So I'm going to start with myself. I had a relationship that had a 12-year run, a relationship that was sadomasochistic, a relationship that was abusive, but at the same time, it was good. There were good times. There were great times. Many of you have seen me with my partner, or my former partner now, traveling the world, putting a seemingly perfect picture of our relationship. And many of you have often said, oh, I'm so jealous, I wish I could have his life. He seems wonderful, his relationship and his travels. But a lot of times, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And this is a forum where we can discuss the realities of a relationship and also the illusions of a relationship, both from the inside, experiencing it, and then the perception from the outside looking in. We have two perceptions going on. The reality that we are experiencing that you don't see behind closed doors, and then the perceptive reality that you perceive from the outside looking in. Not everything is as beautiful and as perfect as it may seem. And that is what I want to talk today to you about. In what way have you experienced that where, the relationship as you are living it is not really the perception that people may be looking at it from the outside looking in. We're going to start with Keisha.
Outside looking in. I think it's a matter of how you perceive it when you're in the relationship, more so than, like, for me, I don't really care what people think about my relationship. And it's really not their business, but it depends on how you carry it. Like, you can bring other people into the relationship just by, talking about your issues or gossiping and things like that. But if you kind of keep people out of that, then you're not concerned about what their perception is. And I think that's the way it should be. Like, you should be able to go to your partner and say, this is the issue I'm having, I need to communicate with you about this, rather than going to your friends and your family members and then bringing them into that. And I think if you bring family and friends into it, then that's when the influence of their perception comes into it. Does that make sense?
Yes. And you?
I agree with a lot of information that you mentioned, Keisha, because it's true. It's very true. And especially, it becomes a lot more challenging, especially when you have children involved, where your concern also at that point is, how does this affect your children? How does this affect your family? But from the outside looking in, it really is a dynamic. It's a deep dynamic as to how you foster that relationship with that other individual. Because at the end of the day, it really should only matter between the two individuals involved in that partner. So regardless of how others may perceive, at the end of the day, when you go to sleep, when you go home, when you're waking up with that person, the perception should be with that individual. And that is a challenge.
That's a challenge.
It is a deep
So, leaving the children out of the relationship and dealing with the interrelatedness of the couple. Let's begin with the honeymoon phase of a relationship. When do you think, how do you know that the honeymoon phase of a relationship is over? Because everything occurs in phases, right?
Yes, it is.
They call it a honeymoon when you get married. But if you know the concept of a honeymoon, talking to you as an anthropologist, a honeymoon, the way we got the concept of the honeymoon is that every animal species in nature, including our plants, all have a time when they mate. The salmon fish goes back to its original spawning place, right?
Yes.
The crabs, they all go to the ocean to mate exactly what they were spawned at, right? And that's how we as humans, when we get married, we go away on a honeymoon. What we're doing is no different what the crabs are doing, what the salmon is doing, or what the humpback whale does, or the shark, is that they all go to the place where they were conceived to spawn and then die. That is where we get the concept of the honeymoon. We are also animals, no different than the four-legged animals that are our cousins. So that's where we get the concept of the honeymoon. And we don't stay away long, we come back, right? We're the only species that comes back all other species go, spawn, and die. Right? That this is something that's seen in our plant kingdom, and in our animal kingdom, and in our phyla kingdom, the world of insects and creepy crawlers. So that right there lets you know that the honeymoon phase is temporary. We also have this notion in the ritual practices of Kwanzaa, and where you have 4 spices: the bitterness, the sour, I believe one is the blend, and the last one is the honey, the sweetness of life. This also lets you know that 25% of life is sweet, 75% is rough. Roughneck! Okay? In the Jewish tradition, we have the same concept and the same libation. And so in Islam and all of the other races. So life here is not going to be a long-lasting bliss of happiness, because we don't see that in nature, so we don't see that in the human kingdom as well. So because we are higher primates, we walk on 2s, while our cousins walk on 4s, we tend to have more of a cognition. We're driven by an inner spirit, whereas our animal cousins are driven by a group spirit. They have no soul and no spirit that we can know of, just a vital force and an externalized entity that governs our animals and plants and everything else in our planet. So, speaking in that respect, when do you know that the honeymoon is over? I know that when the honeymoon is over, when I no longer feel the same affection and the same devotion towards my partner. I know that's tough to say, but that is when the honeymoon phase begins to wear off. Is there a way that we can prolong the honeymoon phase? Keep it general, and then we go into specific. Is there a way that you can see that we can prolong the honeymoon phase? My personal experience is, if I lose affection and for my partners, whether man or woman, that begins the end of the honeymoon phase. Have you experienced that yourself?
Absolutely. In every relationship I've been in. Every single relationship. Every single one.
How do we prolong the honeymoon phase in a relationship?
I don't think it's to be prolonged. I think when you use the term a phase, like a cycle, then, okay, we're in this honeymoon phase for 6 months or whatever, and I want to be with you all the time, I want to be around you, and I'm including you in all my activities. That's a phase, and then you get to, we're comfortable with each other, you have your own activities, you're your own individual, and I'm going to let you be that individual outside of me. You don't have to be with me all the time. And then if you feel like, oh, I'm losing affection, I'm losing the closeness that I used to have with you, then we can circle back to that. Okay, how do we rebuild that again the way we used to have it? So if you phrase it as this is a phase, then that's what it is. It's not going to stay the same, throughout the relationship.
Well, I mean, that's a very good point, but because, we have a little low battery with froze. There's Saturn again. Sorry about that. You all know Saturn. You all know Saturn. He has to do his thing. So I don't know how much we lost, so we're going to go back and rephrase a little bit. Ms. Farmer is making a point that it's in the phraseology and the terminology. If we use the term phase, then we are limiting it. Maybe it's the way we're looking at it that should be explored, and not give it an actual label or definition of a longevity of a cycle. But it's normal to think that way, because everything in life is governed by cycles. Relationships is no different. So I like that perspective, because that gives us more control. But one thing that we don't control is how we, the feelings of other people, the emotions of other people. Right? How do you prolong the honeymoon phase in the context of changing the term taking away the cycle and making it longer. In a way, we're still talking about cycling because we have to look back to find out what happened with the disconnect and let's work towards reconnecting it. So the fact that we have to go backwards to see where the disconnect occurred, it's cyclical. So we can't even break away from the fact that it is cyclical. We still have to go within the cycle to find out what went on and what happened to prolong it. Is that realistic? Do you think that's realistic that we can prolong the honeymoon phase, considering that we don't see this in nature? In nature, everything has a particular permanence and cycle, including the honeymoon phase. And as we perceive it in nature. If this is true in nature,
If I want to be
it's untrue or true with the human kingdom, which also coexists with nature.
I want to be honest with myself and say that part of it, just a small part of it, Venus says that's possible. It's possible. It's just the aspiration and the hope that we all kind of hold on to say this is possible. There is hope. That's why we want to prolong it. But personally, through every experience that I've been into, it hasn't been possible. It has not. And nature demonstrates that it's not.
Right, because nothing is long lasting. If that's the case, we live forever. But life has a cycle too. It has an ebb and flow. Eventually we will die. So that's a very good point. I don't believe that we can prolong the honeymoon phase. I believe because we have two human beings who don't know each other, who get to be together, and they have to know each other and then connect as a unity in the relationship. There's you, there's me, and then there's the relationship. We got three bodies going on here. So I believe maybe we can prolong the honeymoon phase if when the two people come together are secure in themselves enough, mature in themselves enough, and liking themselves enough.
Yes.
I think those precursors are necessary. You have to love yourself and like yourself, and you have to love and like the other person, and also like and embrace what's ugly or not so good about the other person,
And accept it.
and accept it.
And accept it.
Right? What do you think about that?
That's true because you have to accept the other person for who they are, how they are, and just understand you're not meant to change that person. They can only change themselves.
Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, I never liked my partners. I love them, but I've never liked them. I'm honest. I may like you, I may love you, but if there's something about you that I don't like, and I cannot get you to change it, then I'm going to lose affection for you.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm being honest.
I agree. I agree.
You know me, I'm not abstract. I keep it real, I'm earth. The only way I can lose affection for you is if you don't flow with what my objectives are. The same thing with the other partner. The other partner may not like my shadow or the darkness in me, and over time say, you know what, this is not the person I thought I wanted to be with, or this is not the person that I thought he was. And then that can make the person also lose affection. And then that ends the honeymoon phase and it goes spiral from there. Would that be something that has happened to you?
I think you. So are you saying that you don't accept certain things, certain behaviors in them that makes you not like them?
Right.
Certain behaviors that they didn't show in the beginning,
Even if they did show it.
but if they wears them later
Right.
on.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Over time.
Right.
So
And that's honest. And a lot of people are not that honest.
And I would have to say that the honesty that you display is a part of us. I know for myself, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I know for myself after understanding more of the astrological aspect, 19, for example. The power, the domineering, the control. And when sometimes I get to myself in that situation to say, I can't control this person, I'm not meant to control this person, but then I also understand this person cannot control themselves. Because of the fact that they can't control themselves to change, I lose that affection. Because I realize the truth is that person may not change. And I have to accept that the fact they will not change. And that's a difficult aspect. That's a difficulty to accept.
Does that mean that your love is not unconditional?
Right, correct.
Yes.
The love is conditional.
It's conditional.
So you both feel that?
Yes.
Right?
Keeping it real.
And
That's not how you feel when you're coming into the relationship. But it morphs to that degree. You have to like the person for who they are. I have never liked the people that I've been with because I've always found something deficient in them that I feel that they should improve upon themselves. Even if I myself have my own deficiencies.
that's true.
And a lot of people don't want to be that brutally honest. And that is a form of narcissism. You know?
It is.
It's a form of narcissism.
But it's
So how do we evolve from that? Like my partner Emily. From the very beginning, I despised his silence. Man or woman, one thing I don't like is silence in a relationship. I think God gave us a mouth, a larynx, a voice box. As a higher primate, we've been given the gift of speech. We're not animals, always just fucking, that's it. That we've evolved from that, from our cousins, right, on all fours. So I'm two-legged creatures, or primates as we are, with a brain and a mind, and the ability to become gods ourselves. What the fuck is the problem with not speaking? Well, there are people who don't speak. There are people who naturally don't speak. And they are happy being that way. I don't like that. So I'm going to lose affection for you. Because imagine we're at dinner, what are we going to talk about? We can hear the knives and forks clinking and clanking, and the drinking and swallowing. And you can hear the crickets outside, and you know it's heavy traffic. And you can still hear the goddamn crickets outside. That's gonna make me go crazy.
Yes.
How can you grow with another human being when there's no speech?
And you're Mercury.
And
Just
I'm
like I am.
Mercury, like you
Just
are.
me. I love to communicate.
I love to
I
communicate.
have to communicate.
And every partner I have met does not speak. I've been with this partner for 12 years, Scorpio, and not to speak negative on his behalf, great person. He is, because everybody loves him. But I don't know him now than I did 12 years ago. Because he doesn't speak. There is no exposition. There's no communication. And then I'm going to lose respect for you. This is the beginning of the bursting bubble of the honeymoon phase. How have you been, Keisha, starting with you, with that? How have you experienced that?
People who don't speak. Absolutely, yes. But again, you have to accept people the way they are. If they're not communicators, there's still something about them that attracted you to them. And you can't expect them to be extroverted, talking, and social just because that's how you are. You
That's
gotta
correct.
accept them for what they are. And if they're introverted and they're quiet, then there's something about that that turns you on. Maybe it's the mysteriousness about it. Maybe it's
It never turned me on. Never, never, never. If anything, it makes me treat you with contempt. What the fuck you ain't talking? What you hiding? What's up? No, it sounds wrong. It sounds terrible. But come on, guys. Uncle Fernando is gonna keep it real. I know it's fucked up. I know it's fucked up to think that way and to feel that way. But come on, come on. Let's take our hats off. Come on.
I give you a lot of practice. To actually say and speak the truth.
Yes.
Let's
Otherwise,
not hide this. Let's not hide this.
no.
There's no
Listen.
need to hide it.
No. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose credibility with my subscribers
Yeah.
who know me, and I'm very brutally honest. But I also was born on the 19th, a common number. People born on the 13th, 14th, 16th, and 19th have issues of love and self-love and self-acceptance and validation. All those things creep up in a relationship, and then it becomes a battlefield. Has that ever happened to you, where the relationship of the person that you love suddenly becomes from a bed of roses to a Pat Benatar song? Love is a battlefield. A big song, by the way. A battlefield. Let's talk about it.
And what you say there is very true, because in a relationship, you shouldn't have to come home to the war zone when your home should be the safe haven. Because
Right.
the world around you enough may feel like a war zone. Every day, when you go and do certain things, or whatever you do, the exposure out to the world. And you should be feeling in a relationship to come home, feel this is a safe haven, and not a battlefield. Where I got your six, I have your back. That's safe haven
It
feeling.
should be peace.
It should be peace. It should be tranquility within there. Sure, there's going to be flare-ups. Sure, there's going to be moments of bursts and outbursts. But what you're saying is true. Sometimes you can't feed into that energy. After a while, that's where
Too abstract. Feeding to that energy, what energy?
the energy of fighting, the energy of the arguments, the battles, the
What precipitates that?
Expectations.
expectations. Yes.
That's right.
Expectations and
Oh, here we go again. Saturn. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how much. We have to keep track of the camera because Saturn will go poop or the thing will go poop. And I don't know how much I will miss, but can you repeat that?
But to say that towards what precipitates the argument and fighting is the expectation,
Expectations.
is holding that expectation, yet it comes on a condition, right? And as we grow, sometimes we have to accept for things how they are, unconditional. That's a challenge.
Well, I don't think that's realistic. I don't think, too abstract. Let me now bring it to earth. Listen, if you don't float my boat anymore, it's gone. If there's no communication, I don't know how to fix the relationship if you're not speaking. I don't have much patience to deal with what I feel are remedials. If you're going to be involved in a relationship, you need to understand that there has to be a certain level of maturity that you have to enter the relationship with. Now, me, the manner that you speak is the level of immaturity on my end too. Because I should be sympathetic enough and patient enough to allow that person to come out of their own shell so they can evolve. And I, as the partner, should usher it. But that in itself can be exhaustive if the other person is taking too long or does not want to evolve in the direction that you feel will be healthy for them and for the relationship.
Yes.
Because there is a responsibility to the relationship. So there has to be expectations individually for the fostering and sustaining of the relationship, which is a separate entity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cannot get your partner to be in congruence with you, then how can the relationship get any nurturing? It's like a potted plant and you got the soil, but if you don't put the water, she's not gonna grow. She's not gonna sprout her flower. So it is a mutual cooperation that has to occur between two people in order to sustain the relationship. In my personal situation, what destroyed my relationships have been the fact that I'm the one that usually lose interest because as an intellectual person, for me to grow and for me to learn about you, there has to be communication. If there's no communication past age 30, then you got no business being in a relationship if you cannot fucking speak. Because then it's not fair for the other person. The burden falls on the other person to figure you out, to think for you, to second guess you. You could be wrong, but what can you do? Nothing else is coming out of that person. So then what do? You love them, you care for them, but I have to eventually leave you. Because then I don't begin to grow, and then I'm going to start looking elsewhere. And mental stimulation is very important in keeping me plugged in a relationship. Mental stimulation. What is it for you?
Well, mental stimulation, of course, mental stimulation being a Gemini, mental stimulation.
Myself for Virgo as well. We need that more than sex. The sex can be good, off the chain. If there's no communication, I'm gonna get tired of that too.
Yeah.
Let's be real about
That's
that.
the truth.
Let's be real about that.
That's the truth.
So, how do you feel the same way, Miss Farmer? It's a different perspective coming from a woman. And it's a Scorpio. Scorpio woman. Award-winning Scorpio woman.
I agree. There has to be communication. As a woman, I'm looking for protection that you're providing, that you're providing emotional support as well, which is difficult for a lot of men,
Yes.
especially when they do not have some type of water element within their chart, or just they're not water signs, or they're just not, they weren't given that nurturing as children, so they don't know how to express emotion and affection in a loving and healthy manner. So that's been some difficulty I've had in dating. But yeah, those things are important. Security, communication, how you express yourself in a healthy way.
I also have to add on to that to say how you make up to, because how you make up drives that intensity to be able to say, even during arguments, even during fights, but communication leads towards resolution. But how you could also make up, besides the communication aspect, emotionally, physically, that's also more. Make up sex. It's great moments too to make up with somebody.
Some people will make up with you but not apologize.
But not apologize, that's true.
So it's still a form of communication.
It is.
I cannot have makeup sex with you if I'm still pissed off. That makeup sex never worked for me.
You see, that might be a little different from me. I might.
That never worked for me. No, I'm mad and I'm gonna stay mad. Get the fuck out of here with makeup sex. I don't want no makeup sex. I'm still mad. Give me the communication. We can get that shit, go on a tree, go on a park and do something. No, give me what I want. The communication.
50% of it.
And trust me, I like sex as much as everybody else, but we gotta have something to talk about afterwards. And hang out and cuddle people about. No. Get out of here. Oh, it's not healthy. I don't know, that's just me. I'm a type A personality, an alpha personality. And that might be part of the problem. What do you think? Do you consider yourself to be an alpha personality?
Absolutely.
Do you consider yourself to be an alpha personality?
I'm an alpha female, but I wouldn't say I'm an A-type personality.
Okay. What does that mean?
It means
To be an
that-
alpha female but not be an alpha type personality.
It means that I look at the other person's feelings and their perspective before I start criticizing or trying to control. I'm flexible.
Well, I have to be, that doesn't really define alpha, but we're gonna take it. Alpha for me means, it's in the word alpha, like me first, then you. Because I cannot focus on you if I don't focus on myself to do what I need for me. When I get me straight, then I'll be an alpha for you. and provide for you. But an alpha needs stimulation. An alpha personality, or an alpha male or female, needs stimulation. It's been my experience, I don't know about Mr. Rodriguez or Ms. Farmer, but it's always been my experience that as an alpha male, I've always attracted the opposite, the non-alpha, the one that has to be led, you know, like a bull with a yoke, and you have to hit him and so he can move. I've always attracted people that I have to push to evolve. And it's exhausting, and it's tiring, and it requires a lot of energy.
It does.
How do we that? What do you feel, Ms. Farmer?
I guess the best advice would be not to get involved with them. If you look at it and you say they're not, you know, the Bible says equally yoked.
But if you attract them, if they're attracted to you, you attract that. How do you? How can you?
You're attracting,
How do you work with it?
You're attracting it for a reason.
Well, for an example, if I attract those people, it's because I might need to be slowed down. And the example of them being, you know, moving at a slow pace might be the karmic lesson or the evolutionary impulse for me to slow down as an alpha and smell the roses and evolve. So I'm telling you that so you'll know that I understand karmically, spiritually, why I may be attracting these types of people. It still doesn't make it any easier to live the experience with someone, maintain the honeymoon phase, any type of admiration and respect, and keep the relationship cohesive. It's still difficult because that means that the person who is the antithesis of you controls the relationship. Do you feel that way? Do you feel that the person controls that relationship?
From the very beginning.
No.
No. I'm saying from the very beginning of my relationship. It's been like that.
Too abstract. It's
Okay.
been like that. What?
The controlling aspect.
From whom?
From her.
From the person.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And the same thing with my partner. It also, do you believe that the age difference or age disparity can play a role? Me and my partner have a 17-year age difference. Now, in my birth chart, I have Saturn in the 7th house. They're positive, though, in the 3rd. So in the 3rd and the 7th house, that means that I attract older women and men. That's always been the case. So is age a factor here when it comes to having a relationship that can survive a longer honeymoon period?
You would think, logically, it should, right? Because sometimes we may think that with age comes wisdom. That may not always be the factor.
No, I told that to mention that.
I would say no. Age does not have any factor to that at all.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow. Ms. Farmer?
I agree.
An example?
Again, it goes back to the expectation. I mean, you know, if I meet you and you're 50, but you're still acting like you're 25, you know.
Well, that's a good example. I'm 53, and I'm still the baby. I'm still a child. I'm still a boy. Does that make me less, qualified to be in a relationship because I may be acting like a young boy? I'm a great provider. The women or the men in my life have never lacked one for anything. I take care of business. Does that count, or is that an exception? Because that is maturity. I may act like a boy, but I'm still a man when I need to be. Does that weigh in the equation?
It contributes to my attractiveness to that person. because you can provide all day, but if you don't know how to pay a bill online or write a check, or like you're just throwing money at me, but you don't know how to be responsible, that's a problem.
So we're, okay, that's interesting. Because men don't see it that way. That's a great,
And
again,
again, it's also the expectation, so it's like, well, if from the beginning you say, well, Keisha, you handle all the bills. I don't wanna look at bills, I don't wanna write checks, I don't wanna look at due dates and when it's due. Here's the money, you take care of it. Then I've taken on that responsibility as the mature, responsible person in the relationship, okay? This is my role. I know I'm supposed to handle all the responsible adult stuff, and I'm just looking to you for money, whatever. But you gotta set that up from the beginning, and I think Alex would agree with me as a married person, what the roles are, what the expectation is.
so it goes back to communication. It goes back to communication. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We're running out of time. We did want to focus on the honeymoon phase. The next time we're going to continue with this, probably with the same panel or a different panel. And we're going to maybe welcome you guys to be a part of this panel when I'm in your state or city. Guys, thank you. Please donate. www.paypal.me/people's or go for a consultation. Any minute closings from Mr. Rodriguez and from Ms. Farmer. Shoot.
I just want to say it's been a wonderful experience having this with Fernando. Absolutely recommend him for astrology, for the student, for a coach, and absolutely, it's been a wonderful journey. I can't thank him enough for everything he's been able to do in my life.
No, he that's the man. Ms. Farmer.
Yes, Fernando's a wonderful teacher. I'm so blessed to have him in my life, and to have found him on YouTube. And just
I paid them a lot of money to say
no.
this. No, they ain't talking about themselves, they're talking about me. I want to talk to them about that.
It's just the truth.
Yes, and if you haven't spoken to them or gotten a reading or the birth chart, I recommend it so that
Top notch.
you kind of know what's going on in your life for you personally. You're not just watching the videos.
And especially in relationships,
Yes.
especially this topic.
Thank you guys. Now you know where your monies are going because I paid these people and bribed them so they make me look good.
Bye.
Bye.